Relationships fade if you don't tend to them, and neglected relationships are missed opportunities that often have financial consequences. Hi, I'm Jane Ayers, and this is Money Changes Everything. Stop waiting for permission. Career lessons from my 20s. Welcome to the fifth and final edition of Jobtober. The little tiny pumpkins are taking over your grocery store window display, and for many of us, it's open enrollment season. In this 5-part series, we've explored how to make your job work for you and how to improve your life at work. Well, at least the financial part of it. We've already covered employee benefits, layoffs, consulting, and negotiating. So let's look at everything I regret about my career. Yikes. Key takeaways. Most of what you try won't work, but staying in motion creates conditions for luck to find you. Saving early, negotiating every role, and understanding benefits shape your long-term freedom. Saying yes to everything can open doors, but knowing when to stop is what keeps you sane and solvent. In my mid-20s, I felt stuck in my career. I was 5 years into book publishing, working in the academic division. The job was a volume business, chasing down tenured professors to turn dissertations into monographs, packing up research that maybe 50 other people in the world would ever read. At first, I loved it. There was a thrill in convincing a scholar to sign with me and helping ideas make their way into print. But over time, the shine wore off. I was doing the same work on repeat with almost no increase in pay. The projects that actually excited me, the kind of books that felt alive and urgent, I was told I could work on them, but only in addition to my regular output or on nights and weekends. That kind of hustle didn't come with any more money, and at the rate they were paying, I couldn't even afford to live a reasonable distance from the office. At the same time, I was desperate to break into food writing. I went to networking events, sat through conferences, collected business cards, and cold emailed writers and editors I admired. Almost no one replied. Late at night, after long days at my day job, I was testing recipes, writing essays for tiny checks, and trying to wedge my way into a world where I had no connections. I hadn't gone to the right schools. I didn't know the right people. Every path felt blocked. What changed wasn't my resume or my network. It was momentum, the sheer fact that I kept showing up, even when it felt pointless. Then one night, scrolling Facebook, I saw an author of mine post a job opening at a music media company. The job sounded like it had been written for me. I threw together a short cover letter and got my resume in shape, expecting nothing. I had no in, which is why I nearly fell out of my chair when the hiring manager emailed me back. Somehow, he looked at my academic publishing background, my freelance food writing, and the odds and ends I'd been piecing together, and he saw what I saw, that I was actually perfect for the role. That job changed my life. I met some of my closest friends there. I met my husband there. And most importantly, I finally got to work on the kinds of projects I'd been chasing after in the margins of my day job. Looking back, it didn't feel like a straight line. Most of my efforts, late nights writing for very little money, conferences where no one remembered my name, went nowhere. But they kept me in motion, and once I was moving, luck had something to work with. Just so we're clear, what I mean by very little money is being paid $100 for an essay or recipe that took at least 6 hours to research, interview for, transcribe, write, and edit. Looking back, what felt like luck was just years of trying different things, most of which went nowhere. I'd gone to the events, done the side hustles. None of these efforts paid off directly in the moment, but all the work did keep me in motion. It's funny when you read autobiographies of 20th century entrepreneurs. I'm thinking of Phil Knight and some other people, which are mostly about white men over 50. They always skip lightly over a particular part of their story, how they got their first job. There's usually a dad, a coach, or a family friend who gave them that first job. I don't begrudge their success, but it always makes me laugh when they frame their careers as pure grit and genius, while ignoring the enormous leg up they got from inherited connections or a family loan. I've had plenty of privilege in my life, which I acknowledge openly, but I didn't have those kinds of shortcuts when it came to my career. I might have if I'd gone to the same career as my parents, but I chose a different path, one where I didn't have any prior connections. However, what I did have was the willingness to keep trying new shit, even when most of it wasn't working. And yet, even with that persistence, there are still some career moves I wish I'd made earlier. Some I learned the hard way, others I borrowed from smarter people. If I could go back in time to the start of my career, here's what I'd tell myself. I wish I treated my career more like a business. For too long, I acted like an employee, waiting to be noticed, instead of someone responsible for managing their own professional assets. A simple contact log would have made a huge difference. Nothing fancy, just a spreadsheet to keep track of the people I met, the emails, the conversations, and follow-ups. There's so many people I met in my 20s that I no longer am in contact with. Relationships fade if you don't tend to them, and neglected relationships are missed opportunities that often have financial consequences. And remember, if you do get laid off, you might lose access to all your contacts. So save those important email addresses somewhere while you can. Well, maybe first read your company's policy on privacy so you don't get sued. I wish I had been better about contacting people I admired. When I did send those, "I love you, can I pick your brain" emails, they were vague and forgettable, and I shouldn't have been surprised when no one answered me. Now that I'm sometimes on the receiving end of some of those emails, I see exactly why. A stronger email doesn't just say, "I'd love to ask you some questions." It's direct, respectful, and specific. "I admire your work. I'm trying to break into X field, and I'd love to hear about your experience at X company. Here are 3 questions I'd be so grateful for your perspective on." It gives me a chance to just reply to your email and give you the answers you want. If I'm free, maybe I'll book a meeting with you. But if you just ask someone for their time without giving them exactly what you're looking for, you're probably not going to get a response. Gratitude makes people remember you. Don't forget to thank them. I wish I'd started keeping a record of my achievements, promotions, raises, and freelance pitches. When the time comes to craft and ask for one of these things, it's so much easier if you already have concrete examples at your fingertips to use as templates. And that means always having an updated resume or website with all of your stuff on it. I wish I'd learned to read a benefits package earlier. At the time, I cared only about salary. I didn't understand retirement contributions, the value of a 401k match, healthcare costs, and stock options could add up to tens of thousands of dollars over decades. A job that looks lower paying on paper can actually be the better financial decision if the benefits are structured well. I wish I'd been a better saver early on. Even a modest cushion changes how you negotiate, how you leave jobs, and how you handle risk. Without savings, you constantly have to play defense or are stressed about running out of money. I was always stressed about money. Honestly, it wasn't until I got married that I felt the terrible weight of fear of running out of money lift. With savings, you get to play offense. That's a financial truth that extends beyond your career. Having money in the bank is about power and freedom. I wish I'd been more strategic about free work. Early on, I said yes to unpaid and underpaid opportunities because I wanted experience. And sometimes that was the right call. In fact, early on in your career, it is almost always the right call. Writing for exposure occasionally opened doors for me. But the problem was I stayed in that phase too long. The hard part isn't working for free. It's recognizing when you've outgrown it. If you don't draw the line at some point, people will happily let you work for free forever. The transition from say yes to everything to my time costs money is awkward, but financially and professionally, making the switch is essential. I didn't make it soon enough, and I'm still struggling with some of the setbacks that it caused me. I think saying yes to everything that might help me has led to a lot of my success, but it's also led to a lot of unnecessary and unnatural stress and very early mornings, she says as she edits this at 5:49 a.m. Sometimes you have to say no, and I think the most successful people are the ones who nail this transition. I wish I negotiated my pay at every job. Even small bumps in pay compound over time, especially once retirement contributions are tied to them. I thought negotiation was about getting a bigger paycheck right away. What I didn't realize that every missed negotiation set the baseline for my future raises and cost me far more in the long run. I think the best advice I can give is that it's always benefited me greatly to be working on the next thing. To always not just have a job, but something else career-related that gives me energy. I wrote freelance articles about food while I was working as a book editor. I started my financial planning business while I was writing album reviews for a music website. Maybe that makes me a crazy person, but I have found success in what I've done, not just by hard work, but by saying yes to as many opportunities as possible. You never know which side thing will turn into your next chapter, but having one keeps you less dependent on a single paycheck. If I could tell my younger self one last thing, it wouldn't be about resumes or networking events. It would be this. Stop waiting for someone to hand you your next step. Apply anyway, pitch anyway, save anyway. Just do something. Most of the seeds you plant won't sprout, but a few will. You really only need one to change everything. And here's my parting shot. Remember, one yes can pay for a decade of no's.